Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're joining our show again this week. We're glad that there's people like you that are interested in the issues that are important in our cities. We're glad that you're wanting to keep up and know what's happening throughout all of our cities. If you haven't watched us before, each week we'll have somebody on from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area to talk about the issues in that particular city, and that you can, if you're in that city, you can keep up with them. If they concern you, then you can be in contact with your mayors and city council people. And then from time to time, like tonight, we'll have on issues that affect all of us. Now, an issue that's of concern kind of across the country is the number of people that are voting. It seems to be kind of going down a little. Our northwest suburbs are pretty good, but we thought we'll replay some information that we got from Rachel Smith, Hennepin County Elections Supervisor, to talk about what's involved in voting so that you'll know more about it. Now this year, Golden Valley is having a city election, so we're going to aim this particularly at Golden Valley voters, but also at all of you, so that you can think about it. If you haven't been involved in elections, there's plenty of time for Golden Valley people to find out who's running in Golden Valley. You can watch our shows during the month of October to learn about the candidates. You can watch the League of Women Voters information. You can look at information that's put into the Sun Post. There's lots of places where there'll be information out about candidates. But then when it comes time to voting, sometimes people haven't voted for a while, or they're not quite sure what to do. So we're going to go over a number of pieces of information, and I'll put up a couple of websites. Hennepin County Elections will tie you directly into the Minnesota Secretary of State office that'll give you complete information on what you have to do if you haven't voted for a while, where you can check. You can go into Hennepin County and it'll bring you right over, and there you'll find information just under the issue of voting. There'll be information on what does it take to be a qualified voter, so you can check that out. Then there'll be information on how to register to vote. You can register to vote by going to your city hall. You can go to Hennepin County offices downtown. You can go to the service center offices like at Ridgedale and Brookdale. But now the legislature has authorized that you can also do it online. There are certain pieces of information that you need to have, but you can get that information from the Hennepin County website. And there'll be also information on polling places. Where do you go to vote? Because that sometimes stops people, because if they haven't voted, they don't know exactly where to go. You can always get this information from your city hall, but if you're an internet user, like most of us are nowadays, you can plug in information and find out exactly where you need to go vote. So there's a lot of information available on this website, and Rachel Smith, who was the previous head of voting for Hennepin County, is going to share a lot of that information with us. So we're glad that you're interested in the cities, but also we'll want to, if you haven't voted for a while, maybe stimulate you into thinking about, maybe I should vote, or I should get registered and be ready to vote, particularly if you're in the city of Golden Valley. I'm very happy to have as a guest tonight Rachel Smith, who's the election manager for Hennepin County. And we're going to talk tonight about issues for people to help them become aware of, how do I get registered? How do I vote? What happens if I have to do an absentee ballot? And hopefully give some information that'll help those of you out there prepared to get ready for voting this fall, because it's important elections coming up in November. Now, how do you receive an absentee ballot application?
Very similar to a voter registration application. There's a couple ways to do absentee voting. One is all by mail.
Okay.
But the first thing is we have to get the application.
Okay.
So the application is available on our website.
Which is the easiest way if you've got internet connections.
And you have to complete that and then send it in, and we have the addresses pre-printed on the forms for everyone, depending upon the city that they live in.
Okay.
And then basically then the ballots will be issued, the ballot materials will be issued to the voters.
Okay.
And then they do the ballot and they send it back. And there are instructions with the ballot materials to help guide voters through the process.
Okay.
So that's one way. It's just all by mail.
Right.
And the second way is really just come to City Hall.
Okay.
And you can do it all right there.
Ah.
So it just depends on what you need.
What works best for that particular person.
Yes.
But your City Hall can help you with the whole process too.
And for anyone that has special limitations, like maybe it's mobility is an issue.
Right.
There are lots of options for folks, like curbside voting, we call it, even for absentees. So if a person needs to go ahead of time and maybe can't get from the car to even into City Hall, or it's very difficult.
Right.
There are options there too.
So the City Hall can help that person by coming out to where they're at.
Exactly, in the car.
And now submitting your absentee ballot, we talked about one way, going up to City Hall. Other than that, is that purely by mail, or can they bring that into the service centers or the...
It's all by mail or at the City Hall.
Okay,
or
those are basic, or Hennepin County down, if you want to come downtown.
Yeah.
And they talk in your website about you can vote absentee in person, but there were some time periods that were involved in that.
So we're just starting absentee voting for the primary in next week. June 29th is when we open up, and that's both mail and if you come to the
either way.
Either way. So it's about 46 days out from the election. So September 21st is when we'll begin absentee voting for November.
So the two dates to remember are what was it? June
29th and September 21st. But just like the voter registration application, if you get the absentee application in early, so we just kind of put it on a hold until we have the ballot ready and the materials.
So even if you're needing to absentee vote, right now would be a good time to fill out that form too.
Exactly.
And then it gives you a little leeway, a little time if you have questions about it or you're not quite sure about it. And like I said, we'll keep putting your website up and your phone number up so that people will be able to look for that.
And I'm not sure, but if you have any snowbirds, so people that travel to Arizona or Florida to get away from our cold weather.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people like that out there.
Well, you can also have the ballot sent to that address as well. So maybe if you're leaving in September and you'd like it sent to your address in Arizona or Florida, we can certainly do that as well.
And then it can just be mailed back because your residency is here, but you're going to be gone
just
an
for
extended period, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Then it talked about you can vote absentee by using an agent. Now, what did that mean? And maybe you can give a little details there.
Well, really, this is for our group. It's about 7 days before the election. They get into some, maybe they're hospitalized.
Right.
Just didn't anticipate being gone.
Oh, right. And you never know what comes up.
Right, and then they can have a family member or they can have a friend come and actually pick up a ballot for them. And there are special forms that you need. But again, I think if someone if they need this, they can call their City Hall or they can call the county, and we would be happy to walk them through. We can even email the forms. So if for example, if someone was hospitalized, in some cases the hospitals will also offer some materials. They have a stock of them. And so there's all sorts of ways to get access to these things.
And then the other people that have to do absentee ballots are people that are in the military and overseas voters. So I thought we should touch on that too, because people might have family members that fit that category.
Absolutely, and we certainly want our military and our military folks who are serving the country to be able to vote. And basically, they have some special circumstances. So really, if a family member had someone that was in the military overseas, they can actually complete the form for their for whoever it is, their spouse or their family member. It does have to be a family member, so there are some limitations: a parent, a sibling, or a spouse of the person. But there's all sorts of ways. Like, for example, we can actually email a ballot to this person overseas. So
that's helpful.
It's very helpful because the mail transmission between back and forth within 46 days is can be kind of
because they've got timelines that they have to work around.
Yeah.
So if you email the ballot, then they get more time to mail it back, right?
Exactly. And we do have to receive all the ballots by election day.
Okay.
So if an absentee ballot doesn't reach us by election day, it is rejected.
So that if people are having to do an absentee ballot and they know they're going to be gone, they can do it during the early period of that time, like a little while after the end of September.
Yes.
And then they won't have to worry about whether it's going to get back on time.
Exactly.
So all of these ways to absentee ballot, vote, but if there's any questions, because there's a lot of details involved in all the different situations, to go on the website or call the office.
Yes.
Because you're happy to help people.
We really are, and we really we have a lot of people there to help. So we're happy to help, and we really want to be able to help people ahead of time, so that we're not getting to a point really close to election day and we have less things we can do for folks as we get closer to election day.
Yeah, so we'll keep encouraging those people out there that are watching that take advantage of that when it's less stressful for them, but also that to make sure that they're going to be able to vote, that it doesn't get tied up in some of the details and get too short on time.
I would say the other big thing for absentee voters that if there's someone that is always going to be unlikely to get to the polling place. So maybe they have a permanent illness or disability. They can actually sign up to get an absentee ballot sent to them or an application sent to them for every election. So if there's a special election, we'll automatically send them an application, but at least it notifies them that
to make them aware of the fact that it needs to be filled out.
Exactly.
So lots of forms and things, but also lots of help.
Yeah.
If you've got any questions at all, lots of help available to help getting the process to go smoothly. Now, there were a lot of special situations, and I thought we should take each one at a time and let you talk about them. So if it affects people out in our audience, we'll have a little more information about what we've already talked about, but for special situations. Now, one of them is voting for college students. What do they need to do, and what's involved for their being able to vote?
Well, college students really have a choice. They have to make a choice. They can either, vote at their new college location if that's where they're living, or they can choose to vote, sometimes by absentee ballot from their parents' home. So whichever one they want to pick, but they have to pick one. And either way is okay, but again, they have to pick one. Now, the primary is in August, so they may not be at school yet, so they may want to pick, for example, their parents' home. But they might decide to change that in November when they get to school, and that's okay too. Yeah.
And so they have to go through the registration process?
They do. They have to register.
As they're in college, then they have to go through the registration process that we just talked about, right?
Yes, they do. They could register with their absentee ballot as well. So if you are not registered and you want to do an absentee ballot, I think it's more difficult to do an absentee ballot if you're not registered yet. But it is a possibility. So, and we can certainly help with that.
So if they've got any questions about that, they can contact Hennepin County.
Yeah, or
Hennepin County Elections, or go on the website, right?
Yes.
Or your city hall, because your city hall is going to be able to help you with that process too, right?
Yes.
And then we mentioned it, but I thought we could go over that, like each one of these again. You're in the hospital, you're sick, and you are a person that's always voted, or you're thinking this election is really important and I better vote.
Yes.
What can you do?
Okay, so if you're in a hospital, the easiest way is if you're in a hospital within, close to home or close to your city hall, but that's not always the case.
Right.
And so, there are ways that we can email these forms. Like I said, you can have an agent pick up a form for you and pick out the ballot materials. There are 2 forms to do that because you need to authorize someone to pick up the ballot for you. And there are limitations. So, and we can even do that as late on election day. So let's say someone's hospitalized election
they
morning.
Didn't know.
And we just need to have the application by 2 o'clock. and then we have to have the ballot back to us by 3 p.m.
Okay, so people can, even at the last minute, can make sure that they get to vote.
Yes. Or sometimes we have some new moms who deliver
on
election day.
They didn't even know.
Yeah.
Right.
And we get a few of those calls as well, so we're happy to help.
Uh-huh.
Help Dad.
He can do the running, right?
He can do the running, yes.
Or a family member, I think you said, right?
Yes.
But that, given that situation, you still can be able to vote.
A friend is fine too, as long as it just is a matter of authorizing someone to pick
with
up
the
that.
forms, filling out the right forms so that it works.
But getting the forms is crucial because you want to get those forms filled out with the patient or with the voter.
Right.
And then come see us. So it's better for us to deliver them by email or by fax.
Right. And then you know that they've got the right forms.
Yes. And a lot of times the hospital will know. They'll have someone in their the hospital that will have some information or a place that we can email or fax to at the hospital.
So they can probably help you with it too. Now, some people live in residential facilities. What about that? What about them? What do they have? What's the special parameters for their voting and how they can do it?
People that live in residential facilities have some extra things, like they can use, for example, if they're going to vote by absentee ballot, sometimes the facility will actually coordinate if election judges aren't delivering theirs. Anyway, like nursing homes, a lot of times election judges will be there to deliver the absentee ballot. 20 days prior to the election, and they basically bring the materials to the nursing homes. But assisted living, for example, may not have that. So, but they might have a person that can vouch or certify the absentee ballot for them. If they need that. So, so residential facilities. It depends a little bit on the facility that they're living in. But mostly they have they usually the benefit of having a residential facility is that they do sometimes have people within that facility
that can help you with that whole process,
or at least contact us so that they can get more information to help everyone within the facility.
So a person in that kind of facility or a family member can find out from Hennepin County exactly how, if there isn't help in the facility itself.
Yes. And most of the time it's just using that absentee voting process.
And then an important thing is voting when people's civil rights are restored. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because we talked about how you couldn't vote if you had a felony, right?
That's correct. And we do, in November, we are planning to have a probation officer at Hennepin County to answer any last-minute questions about whether or not someone is technically off paper and not serving a felony sentence anymore. We want to make sure people are educated and know that because sometimes it's not always very clear about whether or not they've been released from their felony sentence. So, so that's one way. But I think the other is to call someone ahead of time. So call and find out before you register or before you do an absentee ballot.
Yeah, if you're in that situation, because there are certain requirements that you have to meet, and then you're able to vote again. To make sure that you've met them. This has been a problem around the area if somebody's home is foreclosed on during this process and it's coming up to voting.
Well, if someone has foreclosure proceedings, but they're still remaining a resident in the house, they still are sleeping at that residence and they're still maintaining that residence for voting purposes. So they don't need to be concerned about registering at that residence.
It's election day now. You're registered, or you're registering on that day, or you've that worked that way through. We'll start out with people who haven't voted might say, where in the world do I vote? I don't know where to go. How would they find that out again?
Well, sometimes we hear these stories about voters who are new, and they see a vote here sign and they pull over and go, oh, this looks like a good place. And we would love to do that, but unfortunately it doesn't quite work that way. So even though it says vote here, it doesn't necessarily mean that's where everyone votes. So the best way is really to look online. And you basically what you do is you enter your address. And then it tells the polling place of where you go.
So it's an easy process.
It really is. It's just a matter of entering your house number and your street name. And voila, it comes up.
And then you'll be sure you're in the right place. Because every voting place does have the sign and the flag out, right?
It does. And every polling place, and there's
Right,
405
all
throughout
over,
the county.
Right.
You know, we'll have a vote here sign and a flag outside,
right.
welcoming everyone,
Right.
but not, but people just within that area.
But then they could also call, or they could check with City Hall too,
Yes.
because all of the places that we mentioned before would be able to help people find their polling place.
Yes.
So do that ahead of time if you're not sure where you're going to go to vote.
And we really want to avoid having people drive all over or be referred to a wrong polling place. And so doing that ahead of time saves a lot of effort.
Save a lot of time.
Yes.
Now, you and I were talking ahead of time about the fact that you're able to provide sample ballots to people.
Oh, we are.
So tell me how people get that and how they can, then we'll talk a little bit how they can use that. Because every place you vote is going to have, like different cities will have different things on them. Your state and Senate legislators will be different. The national ones will be the same for everybody, but other than that, there's a lot of differences.
There are. We have 405 polling places or precincts throughout Hennepin County, but we have 450 different types of ballots.
Oh, wow.
And that is dependent upon where you live.
Right.
So we like to provide sample ballots, and we do that through the polling place finder.
Okay.
So when people look up their address and find out where their polling place is, it'll also have a copy of what their sample ballot will look like, and it looks just like when they go into the polling place. So maybe if they have language barrier issues and they'd like to look at it and read it ahead of time, you know, or sometimes if you need a magnifying glass, you can even make it bigger on the screen to see it. So we put those up about 45 days prior to the election day, and they're available, and you can print them out, or you can just look at them. But it has all the offices on it, so if you want to research or...
Right. Yeah, because I was thinking ahead of time after I saw that was available, that would be a really good thing for those of you out there that haven't voted before and you're not sure who you're going to vote for. If you know the names ahead of time, there's lots of resources out in the community that will be telling you information about candidates. Local newspapers will, the Star and Tribune will, all kinds of websites will, the candidates themselves will, but you need to know who it is that you're actually going to be voting for.
Yes.
So printing off that ballot would be like a first step in the process, because then you can be aware, once you know who the names are, when something comes up for that particular name, check it against what you're looking for in a candidate.
Yeah. It's very common for us to actually see, you know, someone fill out the office of the president, and then they leave everything else blank.
Right, because they don't know, right?
They don't know, and that's okay to do, of course.
Okay, right.
But if they want to you know, prepare ahead of time, they could get some of those resources done.
Right. Now, there's different ways that ballots are marked. You're in the polling place, you got the registration done, you're all signed in, and now they're sending you over with a ballot. What can they expect there?
Well, basically, they will have ovals to fill in. It's like a standardized test, but it's not quite like a standardized test. But it really is just filling in the ovals. So, you know, taking a pen and completing the oval for. The header of each race will always say how many you can vote for.
Okay, so that's important.
It is important because sometimes you can vote for two in some city races.
Oh, right.
And most of the time it's vote for one, but there are some possibilities of voting for two for like city or school board races. So, but it always says it right underneath the header. So if you have any questions.
And that was something that got involved in recounts, right?
Yes.
How it was marked in.
We saw some very creative things in recounts, like lizard people.
All kinds of things.
Yes.
Okay, so once you've marked in the appropriate number for each spot, then how do you actually cast your ballot, or what's the next step that you're going to take? Because we're kind of giving people a step-by-step approach. What's going to happen when they're there?
Sure. Well, they're going to bring it over to a machine.
Okay.
And it's called a voting system. And you insert it, and it kind of takes it from you, and it counts automatically. So it just sort of like a standardized test. It's tabulating as it's going along, and then you get the most important part, which is a sticker.
Yeah, a little red sticker that says "I voted," right?
Yes.
So important. We'll hope that a lot of you out there want to get that sticker this year. There's the whole issue of recounts, which Minnesota has had to go through recently. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the process and what you discovered as you've gone through the recent recounts that we've had it.
Well, I've actually served as a recount official in two recounts, the 2008 and the 2010 recount. And I would say that there were a couple things that I took away from both recounts. I was overall really impressed with the transparency and the materials themselves and how secure they were. So, for example, ballots. So the ballots are transported after they're on election day. They're sealed up by the election judges at the end of the night, and they're transported to the city clerk where they're stored. And at the recount process, that box is actually, and that seal is torn open in front of everyone, showing just the chain of custody of ballots and how important that is. So that was one really important thing we learned, that just the security of our system and how important that is. I would say the other thing is how well our voting systems work. And how much they tabulated correctly. These machines are 99.99% accurate. They just do a really good job for us. And so I think people can feel very confident that when they put their ballot in the machine, that it is being tabulated and counted.
And being properly handled. Now, what stimulates a recount?
What stimulates it depends on the race. But in these particular cases, they were statewide races. And there was a particular law that says if it's within so many, the margin is within so much, it's 1/2 of 1%, it triggers an automatic recount. And, we always have recounts. We always have local recounts. There's always something in the county. But it really just, every time I do a recount, it just really shows really the accuracy and the integrity of the system in general. We have 405 polling places. And to know that all across the county it's been administered accurately and the same way is really good to know.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of this information about voting, and we'll hope that those of you out there have gained from this process. But just keep in mind that registering to vote ahead of time or on election day is certainly fine. Thank you for taking time to learn a lot about voting, particularly if you live in Hennepin County area, all the different ways that you can register to vote, ways that you can find out your polling place, ways that you can check on absentee ballots. We're glad that you've been with us, and we'll continue this show next week, and we'll hope that we've stimulated some of you into thinking about getting registered and getting ready to vote, especially if you're in Golden Valley. We encourage you to find out information. There's 2 city council positions that are open and 1 mayoral position. So we encourage you to find out about the people that are running for these offices and then take time to actually vote when November 3rd comes around. Bye.